Good morning, everybody. My name is George Rowlands, and I'm one of the many consultants here at School Business Services. So I started my career supporting and training schools in their use of their MIS for an LA support unit about 14 years ago now, before moving to SBS just before lockdown. And this is where I began helping to migrate schools to other predominantly cloud-based MISs. Today, I'm going to share with you my knowledge because, as we all say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we begin. It's not moving. There we go. You're all muted, so I'm hoping you can all hear me, but I can't hear you. So if you have any questions, please do pop them into the chat box as we go. If you haven't used Teams before, it's the speech bubble icon either at the top or the bottom of your screen. And my colleagues will either answer those questions or let me know. But don't worry, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. And lastly, as I said, this webinar will be recorded for anyone who can't attend. So who are SBS? What do we do? We were formed in 2007 and we have expert education specific teams across budgeting, finance, accountancy, HR, payroll, ICT and MIS. We joined our parent company, the Supporting Education Group, in 2020, and we are growing in not just team size, but the volumes of schools we support too. But that's enough about us. Let's talk about migrations. Migrating to an MIS, I believe, has three core components. So the vision. Why do you want to change your software? What is it that you want to gain from the new system? And where do you see yourself in a year's time, 2 years' time, or even 5 years' time? What do you want to be different? Then you choose the software. There's so many out there now. Do you go for the market leader, ones that colleagues have experience of, or maybe the cheapest? Everyone's budget is shrinking, isn't it? So what's the answer? Well, I believe it's all of them. Get as many different demos as you are happy with. Ask as many questions as you need to get the closest fit to your vision. If you were buying a house, you would see as many as you wanted to until you found the one that suited your needs and you could see how it would work for you and your family. And then finally, the support. With the right support in place, your migration and aftercare should feel seamless. This should not be a laborious process. Let's discuss each of these in more detail. The vision. Why do you want to change? Is it for consolidation of software? Maybe like so many others, you probably have a legacy setup that you've taken over. And then either due to functionality or lack of knowledge around the system, you then start purchasing other products until you realise that you just need 1 or 2 pieces of software instead of the 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 you have and that you are paying for. It may be due to integration or automation. Do you find those 6 or 7 products that you have require duplication in work, entering data in one piece of software and then again in another? Or they don't seamlessly sync? Surely it's a game changer if a new piece of software could automate daily tasks too, such as scheduling reports to run and sending them to staff members. Or what happens if the staff member who always runs that report is absent? Do you even know which report it is or how to access it? Or perhaps it's automating workflows, say around behaviour, so that if a pupil is given a certain level of behaviour points, the system will automatically let the staff know, or put them in a detention and email the parents. And that leads us nicely on to saving administration time and the burden on your staff. If you can cut their workload down so they're free to get on with other duties. I've always said get the system working for you and not the other way round. Schools want a cloud system. They do. Anytime, anywhere access across a variety of devices with reduced risks to disaster recovery. And if nothing else, this last year has shown us those on a cloud system instantly had access in lockdown, whereas some schools were left scrambling to get access to their own systems. The plus side of cloud systems are also no more waiting for an update. We've all been there in those times when we're told that a fix would be applied in the next update, but then it might be delayed, and then you end up waiting 6 months just for something small to be changed. The cloud systems do tend to be more reactive. The next one, with so many more trusts out there now, is a no-brainer. At trust level, you need access and you need to be able to analyse your school's data at the touch of a button. Not emailing or calling each school asking for stats to be sent over. You want unified processes across the board so you can understand the full picture at any given time. Schools also want to be paperless, less administration time, less "Miss, I lost my letter," or the parents saying they weren't notified of an event, etc. And you can help the environment too by saving trees, which also leads us on to cost savings. Will a new MIS be cheaper? Well, the only way to find out is to detail what packages you're using across your school and their costs. You might be surprised. But look at that over a 5-year period, because remember, in the first year of moving your MIS, you're going to have increased costs due to extra training and maybe project management. Have a look at a few ideas on the screen now. Often the one surprise when we speak with schools is they forget what they have. When we first have a conversation and ask them what software they're using, we get told their MIS software and possibly a communications package or maybe a meals package. But as we start to delve deeper and deeper and have those detailed conversations, we get those classic phrases of, "Oh yes, we have that," or "I forgot we had that." "Oh, and we have this for our assessments and that for our behaviour." And the actual costs tend to be quite big. They actually, the potential savings that they could make are an eye-opener for quite a few schools. Now more than ever is the time to be stringent with your school's budget. So just make yourself a list. Now, what do you need to consider when you're moving? What are the benefits and the pitfalls of making such a big change? Although cloud and cost are the two main benefits, they're not the be-all and the end-all. Have a think about what your timescale is. Is it desperately needed due to other contracts running out, or do you have time to really investigate? What's your budget and what are your priorities for taking this on? It's no good jumping with the cheapest if you end up in the same position and then you're buying extra products again if the functionality doesn't match your school's priorities. Some schools put off migrating as they think they're too busy for such a big move, but actually it will save you time in the long run. What's your internet like in school? Does it need upgrading for this move to be a success? And what are the costs involved for that? Or maybe, do you need a new system? Perhaps you just need an audit to tell you what your software is capable of and dedicated consultancy to help train staff to make it a success. Maybe some new hardware. Do these outweigh the cost of a new system? Not every conversation we have results in a migration. Sometimes schools don't realise the capabilities of their system they already have. Point number 4 is the biggest one, in my opinion. No MIS is the same, which is why you're changing. But you need to think about what you specifically want as a school and your needs and which software is fit for that purpose. No one software fits all schools as you are all so uniquely different. You also need to ask what will be migrated and what information will not. Are there any extra charges to migrate the information that isn't a standard migration? Think about your historical assessment or exams data, linked documents that you may have in your product already. You may also want to integrate the new system with third-party products, such as a catering company or a communications product, until that contract runs out, and some of them have been known to charge for this, so be aware of possible extra admin charges. And the last one, some staff can be resistant to change, so it's good to have transparent, honest discussions once you have chosen your software. So it gives everyone plenty of time to ask questions and see demos. Communication is really key, and if staff feel their opinions matter and any issues are addressed early on, it really does help the process. It's always good to pinpoint those staff that are more resistant to change and have key processes in place to support them. Maybe buddy them up with a colleague who is a quick learner or get some extra training for them. So the software. With so many choices of MIS supplier, it's fine to feel a little daunted, especially if you've been with your legacy system for some time. It is a big move. But these are, by all means, not all of them, but just some of the systems that are out there at the moment. The next chart is a recent survey conducted on the satisfaction levels schools have with their current MIS. And it's fair to say the third one in of I don't know is doing fantastically well with a rating of 7 out of 10 for satisfaction. What it does do, however, is give you an insight into the current market. There is no one big market leader anymore. Schools are definitely changing, and it's not just academies. Maintained schools are on the move too. Historically, almost all local authorities had bulk purchasing agreements that included the MIS as part of a bundle with other systems and support. But as cloud-based products have grown in popularity, local authorities have responded. Many now encourage choice or have framework agreements which offer a range of MIS options. Now, with any product, you need a cycle, and I think migrations fit neatly into the following 6 steps. Start with your project management. Choose your project manager and a team who will support you, and whether that's your current support provider or will you go directly to the software company. Then divvy up the roles and responsibilities. Who needs to be involved and at what stage, and then communicate this to all. Next, investigate. Arrange those software demos with all of the areas of what you need as a school covered, and make sure all relevant staff are invited to those, not just the SLT. Bring in a variety of staff so you get a variety of questions, and take a checklist with you with processes that are must-haves, would-likes, and those that don't matter so much. Once you've got that software, the planning stage comes in. What's the schedule of implementation? Do you have access to dummy sites first? And who will notify third parties? What information does the software company need for a smooth migration? Each company will have different timelines, but these all need to see you. Communicate this too, so everyone is aware of the basic timeline, even if they don't need to know the ins and outs. Next is the training stage. Demo sites with training, coupled up with training, is a fantastic way to learn, but access to your own dummy site to see your data means so much more. What's migrated and where, what's not, how does it look and how does it feel? And then have those conversations. How are you finding it? Are some struggling more than most? Do you need to fit in any extra support, or is it all going to plan? You will have a much better go live if the issues are picked up sooner rather than later. Then the all important go live. Will you get extra support in those first few days? Do you have a dedicated contact for that first week while you're finding your feet? It's important to feel supported throughout. And lastly, it's always good to evaluate the process and look at any issues. Talk to the main users and conduct a final assessment. What has gone well and what hasn't? And if there's any issues, speak to your key contacts to get extra support, because this process shouldn't leave you feeling disheartened with a new system. It should be very much the opposite. And in the centre, the most important area is communication. This is the one key component that makes the whole project cycle work. Communicate as much as you can when you can. Let's have a look at preparing for this now. These are my tips for a smooth migration. Is your current data of good quality? When was the last time you carried out any housekeeping procedures, if at all? Migration is the perfect time to clean up your data and only take with you what's required. Again, let's go back to the moving house. You always tend to have a clear out either before or when you get to your new house. It just depends on whether it's easier to do it before or after you move. Risk management. What happens if the go live date may need to be changed? Will that affect any other processes? What happens if key staffs in the project are absent? Is there someone to take over to ensure it still runs smoothly? Who's involved and when? At what stages of the project? Look at each category of staff and choose the key times to involve them. It's a fine balancing act so everyone feels informed and included, but at the times when they need to be. Staff communication and training is critical to success. They need to know when, how and why you're changing, and then feel fully confident and supported. You want them actively engaging to make this project a success. And get the right support in place. Have dedicated hand-holding throughout the process and after, if you need it. As I said, it's a big move after years in one system. And lastly, find out what checks there are on your old data and the new system to be able to sign it off as a success. And who will do that? Whether it's yourselves, whether you have the time to do that, or whether you buy in support from a different company. At the beginning, I mentioned hindsight. So here are my 3 top tips of what I wish I'd known at the start. No product will ever cater to exactly what you want. There is no magic MIS that will do everything right now that you require as a school. There are best fits, the best fit for your school, for your circumstances and your vision right now. But that said, the new cloud MISs are more reactive to change due to the nature of the cloud. Number 2, not only are you changing your MIS, but you also need to change your staff's mindset. It will be a different way of working, which is exactly why you're changing. Embracing a new system with the approach of how do I do that? Or I need to see this sort of data instead of the well-known phrases of, well, we used to do it like this, or the report used to look like that, will help you and your staff embrace the change. It starts to break down any resistance. And lastly, done right, it does not need to be a stressful, draining experience. It can be the start of something very exciting and something you may well have wished you'd done years ago. So why am I here? To listen. It's so important that you have someone listening to your specific needs as a school or a MAT. Tell me what's working and what's not in your school right now. Speak to your support partner like me, or just come and speak to us, but don't do this on your own. A good support partner will be able to give you an objective view about any MIS you're thinking of moving to. They should be able to support you as little or as much as you want, and effectively hold your hand from start to finish if that's what you'd like. They would have done this many times and have good working relationships with the software companies, enabling them to take the burden from your shoulders while you get on with the all-important day-to-day activities in school. And we usually do tend to jump in and ask the questions you may not have thought to ask. Have a look at what we offer. If you're not going to use the software company's support services, they usually have a list of accredited partners that have met certain standards to give you good quality support and training, and that makes a huge difference. Ask how they are accredited too. Is it just for support or for training also? And have a look for those little extra areas of support that we offer here. Pre-migration support of housekeeping and data cleansing before you migrate saves you the time and the work. Project management with a dedicated consultant throughout who will not only be there at the start with you, but specifically at go live. And we also offer direct dial for the first week to your project consultant, so no waiting for a call back from a service desk. Training, making sure there is a dedicated training program, not only through this process, but also that your next steps are in place for go live and beyond. This should give you a timeline to really maximise your new software's potential. And finally, the post-migration support. What's on offer? What are our SLAs and how do they deliver updates? We release blogs and webinars and have dedicated chats with consultants that are pre-bookable to ensure you get a value-added service. We see all of our migrations as the start of a great new partnership, and we like to make sure it's the best it can be. And when you find that support that works for you, decide how you'd like that to be delivered. Some schools prefer on-site and some are happy for it to be delivered remotely, or you may choose a mix of both. But do your research. When choosing your support, ask them how many migrations they have done specifically with the MIS you have chosen, not just in general. Ask to speak with a couple of those schools to get their views and advice. Speak to the consultants who will be involved and get a feel for their knowledge, and choose a company that you feel confident with. This is your project, your move, and your time for change, and you can do that with whoever support you choose. If you'd like to have an informal chat with us or email us, we're more than happy to help. Alternatively, you can drop past our website to find out more about what we do. Now, I'm delighted to say that I'm going to hand over to Jeff Eden. He's one of our senior account managers who is going to give you an insight into our seamless integration between Arbor and our SBS budgeting software. And then if that's not enough, we then have Chris Taylor, a partnership manager from Arbor, to give you an insight into their MIS software. But first, Jeff, it's over to you.
Morning, everybody. As George said, my name's Jeff, and I work for SBS, and I've worked in our budgets team, our finance team, and I'm now an account manager. But due to the fact we're talking about moving MIS, and I suppose this applies to moving systems in general, one important question to always ask is, do the systems involved talk to each other? If they do, this will save you bags of time. In an ideal world, we all know that the four core systems of MIS, payroll, budgeting and finance will all integrate, or somebody will magically invent a piece of software which does all of those things. But at the moment, that's not the case. So talking about true integration, so this is not download a spreadsheet out of one system and import it into another. We wanted to let you know that launching this week is an integrated link between Arbor and SBS Budgets, which is our budgeting solution. So I know there are some SBS Budgets customers on the call, so we thought it was worth mentioning. So the link or sync is one way from Arbor to SBS Budgets. So we've positioned the MIS system here as king because it's more likely of the two that you're making regular updates in your MIS system compared to your budgeting system. The access is read-only to Arbor so that the sync never updates your MIS system. It only updates your budgeting software. So for those of you that are familiar with SBS Budgets, the sync tool can be found on the landing page when you first log into the portal. And all you need to do is tell the sync that you want to add an MIS integration, choose Arbor and enter your school name and your Arbor URL. And there's also a small setting to add on the Arbor side. So what does the sync transfer? So it transfers staff member names, employee numbers, contract information, FTEs, hours, paid weeks, salary information, allowances, and importantly, the dates on which those changes occurred. So as you can tell already, just by having a piece of software that transfers that data for you, you've removed all that dual entry, which is very time consuming. When you're about to sync, you get a preview of everything that will be updated in SBS budgets from Arbor. You can untick anything that you want left alone for any reason. And if the sync's unsure about any of the data it's going to overwrite, you'll get a warning first, which you can address before transferring the data. Afterwards, there's an error log which shows any bits of data the sync wasn't able to update. For example, your TLR allowance might be called one thing in Arbor and something else in SBS budgets. So they might be called two slightly different things. To get around this, you can map pieces of data to each other, such as your TLRs, your other allowances, your salary points. You only have to do that once, so that going forward, that error will no longer flag up and it knows where to transfer the data to. For existing SBS Budgets customers, if you'd like the Arbor SBS Budgets link, all you need to do is phone up our service desk and let them know you'd like it to be activated. The team will then send across an access request to each location, and you can log into your Arbor portal and approve the access request. The plan is to release this on Friday the 12th of November, with it being available to customers from Monday the 15th. And there are potential further integration options on the roadmap for next year. Best of news of all, is completely free. So if anybody's got any questions and they want to drop me a line, please do, or get in touch with George or Chris at Arbor. That's it, short and sweet. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll just share my screen. Perfect. Can someone just give me a nod that they can in fact see that?
Yep.
Great stuff, thank you. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name's Chris Taylor and I'm one of Arbor's partnership managers based in the north of England. Obviously, you know, George talked about quite a few different things with regards to MIS earlier on. And so I'm just going to give you, a couple of quick examples and talk through some of the reasons as to why schools ultimately do move, change MIS and how Arbor can actually help you in that respect as well. So one of the things that that there's many different reasons and a plethora of them really that drive a school ultimately to decide that a change of MIS is what's required for them. But by far one of the most common reasons that we come across and that I've come across over my years is ultimately schools having just too many systems. If we use Sims as an example, it's a common one. It is it is still very widely used across most of the country in that respect, but ultimately it doesn't deliver everything that schools need in a modern world, and certainly the last 2 years with COVID and everything else have very much highlighted that in that respect. So one of the problems that then comes into that is, again, all of the different systems that go into that then branches further over as well into other areas, like the sheer amount of time and effort it actually requires to do some of the most simplistic tasks, it would appear as well. And so ultimately one of the many ways that we help schools is by bringing all of those systems into one place, but the way that we do that is also without compromise, because George did allude earlier on to no system will ever do exactly what you need and want it to do, and that is true. But what we do try and do is find the best way to do it. And one of the ways that we always get around that is to actually ask, why are you doing this? And it can be as simple as, we've always had this report that does this and it looks like this. But then the question then is, well, why do you need that report and what is the purpose that it serves? And in most cases, we are always able to find a solution that either exceeds or at least at a minimum meets exactly what you're looking at. But ultimately, that's one of the key things to consider. The other side of this, and again, George talked about budgets earlier on. Everyone is under financial pressure all of the time within education. It's just the way that it goes, and all we're overly familiar with it. Ultimately, it's one of those things. But again, all of these different systems cost quite a substantial sum of money. And so again, when a school is looking at an MIS change, they might think, well, okay, our current MIS system, whether it's regardless of what it is, basically will cost a certain amount of money, and then they say, what's the replacement going to cost? But actually at that point, it's then when you need to start thinking about the wider picture and the the wider implications of all of that, because your MIS might cost anything between 1,000 and 10,000 a year, depending on your school and the size of you and your phase and everything else. But actually you've then got to think about total cost of ownership. Some MIS systems, for example, do run on a local server whatever within the school, and that can come at a substantial cost, and they have to be renewed every 3 to 5 years or so. There's then support factored into that. Then you need another bolt on for communications, something for your parents to engage with, then another bolt on to do tracking and assessment and such, something else for safeguarding, and it can go on and on and on and on. And when you start to add all of that together, that's when actually it turns into a very, very expensive spider's web. So again, by bringing all of those systems into one place, not only do you save massive amounts of money, but you also save massive amounts of time, and particularly with all of the focus that's on, staff well-being and workload at the moment, I'm sure that that's something that, we can all get on board with. So I'm going to give you a brief demonstration very, very quickly of one of the key ways, for example, that Arbor can, help you in some of these different processes. So the example that I'm going to use, for example, is what happens, when you need to communicate with parents with regards to tracking and attainment, basically, and more specifically, actually, when you identify groups of pupils or cohorts that might be, struggling in one area or otherwise, and therefore you're considering your options with regards to what provisions you might want to put in place with regards to an intervention or extracurricular learning or otherwise, as the case may be. Now, Arbor does come included with, for example, a full tracking and tracking systems, basically, which covers formative, summative, and everything else in between. But ultimately, it's then what you do with this information. So when you do, for example, identify pupils that might be struggling or otherwise, as the case may be, you might want to do something, and that might be a case of dropping them into an intervention group, at which point you can schedule intervention sessions in Arbor to cover a range of different purposes, which then will of course notify the relevant people, whoever is actually heading that up and responsible, as to why the individual child is within that intervention, and actually what specifically it is that they need to focus on, all the way down to specific statements that they might need to just practice a little bit more, just to really embed that into their long-term memory, so to speak. But once you've done that, otherwise you might find, for example, that, you need to do something a little bit more. This needs to be a little bit repeated. And so this is then when one of the many school processes will ultimately ensue. So Arbor, as well as, tracking, assessment and everything else, does also come with a full parental communication and engagement suite as well, which also includes apps and parent portals and several other different things besides. But there's a general process that might sit around this, and that might be that ultimately, once you've identified who the pupils are and what they're struggling in, you will then need to pull out their information and find out specifically what it actually is that they're behind in. You'll then need to perhaps communicate with their parents. So you've got to find the pupils, then you've got to find their parents, then you've got to find their parents' email addresses, so to speak, then you've got to draft out a letter to them or send an email home or something like that. And ultimately that process, which actually should be as simple as communicating with the parents just to tell them that you're going to be dropping their child into some extra learning over lunchtime or whatever the case may be, can turn into quite a substantial job. I've got a computer science degree, and for example, I cannot for the life of me figure out how to do a mail merge with Word and Excel. It's beyond me, which make of that what you will, so to speak. But beyond that, there's a way that we can really quickly do a process like this within Arbor and ultimately streamline it. So what I would have basically have done is set up a report in Arbor, which will very quickly isolate and highlight the pupils that are, working below a required standard in any area of the curriculum or otherwise, as the case may be. And then when I then need to build an email together, I can simply set up a range of different templates to cover any and all purposes that I might have. So in this particular case, we're going to focus on pupils that we think need to go into an intervention session for Rising Stars Year 2 mathematics because they are struggling. So it's an email, so the normal things apply. Who's it coming from? Is it an individual? Is it a subject lead, or is it just the school? And then who it's going to. But this is where it really saves you the time. So rather than me, again, having to, find the individuals, their parents' email addresses and run through that process, I can just say to the system, I want to send this to the primary guardians of everyone that I've outlined as being eligible for this intervention. It's as simple as that. You can obviously give it a subject title because it is an email. And then beyond that, you can then build out a mail merged email really quickly. So you can type out the content of your message, and you can also incorporate, as I say, the mail merge fields into it, which will allow you to highly tailor and personalize anything, any communication type that you're sending out to your parents. And then it will, of course, as you can see, pull in their correct title and their name, their child's name, correct pronouns, including also the actual reporting fields that you need to convey to your parents with regards to, where they're actually at in terms of curriculum tracking in this particular example. It is, of course, an email, so you can upload attachments. That could be guides to, supporting, working at home and homework, and various things like that as well, or links to BBC Bite Size and the like. But beyond that, you can then just click on proceed, give it half a second, and it will then find all of the parents that this needs to go out to with regards to their child or children, if you've got siblings or otherwise. And then it will do a quick sense check to make sure that they've all got an email address against them. And if you want to preview what's going out to your parents, you can click into there, and it will again pull in all of the correct information, including specifics out of your curriculum tracker as well. And again, that entire process takes about five minutes to set up in the first place, and then, as you can see, even less time than that to actually administer and send out to all of your parents. And the system will know who it needs to send it to. It will know where to look for all of the information. It knows which information to pull out of your curriculum tracker, and therefore the process is completely and utterly streamlined and to a larger extent automated. And as soon as you click send, it's going to send out 33 highly tailored and personalized emails out to your parents that, even to a trained eye, nobody would actually ever know hasn't been, typed out there and then in the office like that. But that same, theme and format and the way that you can actually, have better data at your fingertips to make these decisions is a recurring theme rather all the way through Arbor. And those of you that have seen it in the past will likely remember some various things like that as well. But ultimately, we hope that we'll see some of you in the future to be able to show you the power of it a little bit more than that. Beyond that, though, we as Arbor are on a mission to transform the way that schools work for the better. And ultimately, MIS systems today, much like technology in general, is absolutely 100% there to assist us. It is there to make our lives easier and streamline things and actually mean that we have more time to do the important things that, matter within a school, like the teaching and upholding the standards, rather than endlessly running reports and doing all of those more arbitrary things, unfortunately. And this is, one of the ways that we like to do that. As far as Arbor is concerned, we are the fastest growing MIS in the country. We have been for 5 or 6 years on the trot now, and we work with schools up and down the country of all shapes and sizes, from some of the smallest primary schools in rural North Yorkshire near me, that have 15, 20 pupils in some cases, all the way up to some of the largest inner city secondary schools with upwards of 3,000 students. And of course, multi-academy trusts as well also come into that. Multi-academy trusts are the way that things are going, and they have been for a while. And again, all the way from some of the smallest schools all the way up to the largest ones in the country with 70 plus academies in that particular case as well. The point that I'm trying to articulate is that regardless of where you sit on that scale, Arbor absolutely is for you, can support you, and we are with you all the way on that journey should you choose to undertake it. In terms of next steps, if you would obviously like to see Arbor a little bit more and understand more about how it can assist your school, do absolutely reach out to the team at SBS, and also I will be just hanging around for the Q&A session at the end as well to take any direct questions that you might have about any of that. But otherwise, thank you very much, and I hope you found that short but brief explanation and demo useful.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. So Q&A, does anybody have any questions? Please do feel free to unmute yourself or pop them into the chat box. Stunned silence.
I always find that when there is no questions, it's one of two things, and it's either very good or very, very bad. We'll soon find out.
It's okay. We've got one. So Chris, as a special school, if there is an area for tracking pupil top-up banding, SIN needs, etc.
So I think I understand the question as we are a special school, and is there specific functionality to support us in that respect? The answer to that is absolutely 100% yes. So we also, as well, actually, I didn't mention, we work with more special schools in the country than anyone else as well at the moment. And there's a few different reasons for that, but one of those is absolutely because ARBA is highly adaptable and flexible to whatever your needs are as a school. And usually for special schools, that will come with, tailored and personalised curriculum frameworks, extra steps of progress, customised grade sets, and a range of different things that, need to go into that as well to ultimately support you. But the answer to that is absolutely yes. And of course, we would love to show you what that looks like in real life for yourselves.
Well, hopefully that's answered your questions. Has anybody else got? Yeah, good. No, thank you. I think that might be it on the questions.
It must just mean that between us, we've done such an amazing job that really every question that ever was has been answered. So that's always a bonus, I guess.
That's always a great finish. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. This recording will be made available to you all, and it will be up on our website as well. And as we've said throughout, please do, even if it's just for an informal chat, please do give us a call, and we're happy to chat through any areas you might want to. But thank you very much for joining us today. Okay, take care. Bye.